Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, September 17th. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Kim Mo-gen. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea kicks off the Chuseok holiday on Saturday, and a massive movement is expected to begin starting tonight. From today, the nation observes a special Chuseok quarantine period to curb the spread of the COVID-19 over the holidays. New satellite images show development is underway at the Yongbyon Nuclear Research Facility complex in North Korea, which might enable the regime to enhance manufacturing of weapons-grade nuclear materials. And with Typhoon Chanthu approaching the country, a typhoon warning has been expanded to all of Jeju Island and waters of the island. Heavy rain is pouring down in southern parts of the country and is expected to continue through Saturday morning. We start with Typhoon Chanthu this morning. The typhoon is passing by South Korea, bringing heavy rain and strong winds to Jeju Island and the south coast. According to the Korean Meteorological Administration, as of 7 a.m. on Friday, the mid-sized typhoon was around 60 kilometers southeast of Jeju's southern city of Seogwipo. If it stays on its projected path, it will pass through the Straits of Korea this afternoon, heading toward Japan. A typhoon advisory has been issued for Jeju Island and Gyeongsang-do provinces. There haven't been any casualties reported so far, but several roads, houses, and an underground shopping center on Jeju were flooded. Also, as many as 23 flights to and from Jeju have been canceled. We now turn to the COVID-19 situation. South Korea kicks off the Chuseok holiday on Saturday, and a massive movement of travelers is expected to begin tonight. Authorities are hoping the holidays won't deal a big blow to the latest infection situation, as the nation has been struggling to bring the daily caseload down recently. But a bit of good news is that the nation's vaccination drive is on the way to reaching its target of administering first doses to 70% of the population. For more, we have our Kim Do-yeon at the News Center standing by. Do-yeon, a relatively high daily caseload right before the holiday.
That's right, Mo-gen. South Korea's daily COVID-19 caseload for Friday stands at 2,008, of which all but 35 were locally transmitted. As you said, this is a big daily number and even more significant considering that a mass movement for Chuseok is set to kick off today. The figure is 65 more than 24 hours before and 116 cases higher than for the same period last week. Much of the increase is coming from the capital area. Seoul City alone accounted for more than a third of the local infections tally with 738. That's an increase of 70 compared to last Friday's tally. Many of the travelers are expected to leave Seoul, moving across the rest of the nation, leaving authorities worried that after the holiday there could be a surge in infections throughout the country. Despite the surge in cases, social distancing measures will be temporarily eased starting Friday as the country observes a major 5-day holiday, Chuseok, especially in regions currently under level 4 social distancing measures. From this Friday for a week, families can gather in groups of up to 8 people as long as 4 are fully vaccinated. The relaxed measure will allow families to celebrate the holiday who otherwise would have been unable to meet their relatives. Up to 4 unvaccinated family members are also allowed to get together. But do keep in mind that gatherings have to be held at a private household and not at public places such as restaurants and cafes. South Korea's goal of administering a first vaccine dose to 70% of the population before the Chuseok holiday is looking more likely. The rate stood at 69% as of Friday morning, and following Friday's inoculations, the 70% target could be reached if the current pace continues. Since those in the 18 to 49-year-old group have been up for the jabs, the rate for first doses has been rising about 1% daily. In fact, just on Thursday, more than 428,000 got their first jabs, an addition of 0.9%. The next goal is to have 70% of the nation fully vaccinated by the end of October, with the current rate at 41.8%. This too will pick up speed as starting Saturday, second doses can be given earlier than appointment dates as people can grab leftover vaccines at vaccination centers. Currently, appointments for second doses of Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines come 6 weeks after the first dose. But for the leftover vaccines, Pfizer vaccine recipients can check 3 weeks after their first dose and 4 weeks later for Moderna. Over in the U.S., the debate on COVID-19 booster shots will reach its conclusion on Friday as the FDA's vaccine advisory panel is set to vote on whether to approve the shot for most Americans. The scientific community has been split on the matter, with a recent article in The Lancet saying boosters aren't needed for most of the general public. They insist more lives could be saved if the supply is distributed to those not yet vaccinated. However, Pfizer argues that as immunity wanes over time, another dose is necessary. The U.S. is ready to roll out the booster shots, and some severely ill Americans have already received them. While Friday's vote is not binding, the FDA typically abides by the panel's decision. Italy has become the first European country to make COVID-19 certificates mandatory for all workers. The decision was made as part of an effort by the country to boost vaccination. However, Thursday's decision has not been without controversy and a polarized response from the public. Min Suk-hyun reports.
Italy will make it mandatory for all workers to have a COVID-19 health certificate, either to show proof of vaccination, a negative test, or recovery from the virus. This includes employees in both the public and private sectors. The move is one of the strictest antivirus measures taken by a country and a first for Europe. The measure is to begin from October 15 and remain in force until the end of the year. While the decision was made as part of efforts to boost vaccination, reactions on the streets were mixed.
The Green Pass is an important tool to deal with this serious situation. In such a serious situation, we need effective solutions.
In my opinion, it's not fair, because if I'm a free citizen, I can decide whether or not to get a Green Pass. When there's an obligation, we no longer live in a democracy, but in a dictatorship. So, I do not agree.
Workers who fail to present a valid health certificate will likely face suspension from work without pay, and those found to be working without a Green Pass could face fines of up to about $1,700. Several other European countries have also made or are making COVID-19 health passes mandatory for health workers. About 3,000 health workers in France were suspended without pay after the country made vaccinations mandatory for those working at hospitals, care homes, and health centers. Britain may also require frontline health and social care workers in England to be vaccinated against COVID-19 as part of its plan to contain the virus through the winter. Min Suk-hyun, Arirang News.
Tensions have spiked on the Korean peninsula over North Korea's recent launch of 2 short-range ballistic missiles. But things could get even worse as CNN reports signs of renovations at the regime's main nuclear research facility. Our Kim Hyo-san tells us more.
New satellite images show development is underway at a uranium enrichment plant in North Korea, which might enable the regime to enhance manufacturing of weapons-grade nuclear materials. Revealing the images, CNN reported Thursday that the latest renovations at the facility, located within the Yongbyon Nuclear Research Facility complex, could allow the North to increase production of weapons-grade nuclear materials by as much as 25%. Citing a weapons expert, it also noted the latest development is in line with the regime's previous efforts to expand the facility's floor space so it can house more centrifuges. This, CNN says, could ultimately enable the regime to enrich more uranium on a yearly basis. The article also says U.S. government officials were aware of the latest activities, but the National Security Council, Department of Defense, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and CIA all declined to comment. Signs that Pyongyang is moving to ramp up production of nuclear material could also heighten concerns stemming from a recent report by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which explained the regime appears to have restarted a nuclear reactor within the same complex. Adding these were the first signals of activity at the reactor since late 2018, the report described the new developments as, quote, deeply troubling. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
The recent signing of a security pact by the U.S., Britain, and Australia is being seen as one of the biggest defense alliances formed in decades. However, the agreement named AUKUS has not been welcomed in some quarters, with China among those sharply critical of the move. Ji-young reports.
China is continuing to condemn the historic AUKUS security pact between the U.S., UK, and Australia. Responding to the defense deal on Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry called the agreement extremely irresponsible. The ministry added that the decision to export highly sensitive nuclear-powered submarine technology to Australia is a double standard and urged the three nations to abandon their Cold War zero-sum mentality and narrow-minded geopolitical concepts. It also said they'll eventually end up hurting their own interest if they do not move towards regional peace and stability. The trilateral security partnership announced on Thursday includes an 18-month plan that'll enable Australia to acquire nuclear-powered submarines for the first time and is seen as an effort to counter China. Also including AI and other technologies, it is deemed as one of the nation's largest defense pacts in decades. But UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the new security alliance formed between the US, UK, and Australia is not intended as an adversarial measure against China. The AUKUS alliance also caused frustration for France, who say they have lost the opportunity to forge stronger ties as well as losing an agreement with Australia to supply 12 submarines. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said Thursday on local radio that this unilateral, brutal, and unpredictable decision greatly resembles what Mr. Trump would do. He added that it's really a stab in the back, saying he was angry and bitter that trust has been betrayed. 엄지영, Arirang News.
China has applied to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, a move aimed at further cementing its leadership role in global trade. Beijing's Commerce Ministry says it has presented its application to New Zealand, which acts as a depository for the 11-member trade pact and handles the various administration tasks. For China to join, Beijing would need unanimous approval from all 11 member countries. The deal, from which the U.S. withdrew in early 2017, is widely seen as one that aims to counter China's growing economic influence. The South Korean economy continues to face uncertainty over domestic demand for in-person services amid the fourth wave of the pandemic. In its monthly economic assessment, the Finance Ministry painted a somewhat grim picture despite the country's robust exports and improving job market. In August, the country's exports jumped almost 35% on year, and the job market added more than 500,000 jobs from a year ago. But with the toughest distancing rules still being in place around the capital area, the Consumer Sentiment Index dipped 0.7 points in August to 102.5. The government has pledged to boost the economic recovery through measures such as through handing out COVID-19 relief funds, while also monitoring inflation. South Korea is preparing to celebrate Chuseok, spending a lot of money on food. In response, the government has taken measures to stabilize prices. Ironically, experts say prices could be pushed up by the extra money people have from the pandemic relief funds. Our Seon-kyung explains further.
The cost of purchasing food for the Chuseok memorial rituals, known as chare, have increased again this year.
Foods were expensive last year during the Chuseok holiday, but it feels like things have become more expensive this year, especially fruit.
South Korea's consumer prices in August exceeded the Bank of Korea's inflation target of 2% for the fifth consecutive month, and the data from the Seoul Agro-Fisheries and Food Corporation at end of August show the prices for preparing chare tables for Chuseok increased by 5 to 6% on year. Responding to this, the government has implemented measures to balance supply and demand, starting in the last week of August, a week earlier than last year.
To stabilize prices of Chuseok foods, the government has been increasing supplies, as well as providing price cuts through discount events to help those prepare chare tables.
Starting from August 30th, the government has been increasing the supply of the 10 most in-demand chare table items, such as apples and eggs, by 1.5 times the normal supply and 1.4 times compared to the Chuseok holiday last year. In addition, the government is spending $1.3 billion to subsidize up to 30% discounts on agricultural and livestock products.
In fact, apart from cabbage, the 10 most in-demand food items have all seen their prices fall, between August 30th and September 10th. However, experts say that Korea's fifth round of COVID-19 emergency relief funds in September could raise prices over the Chuseok holiday.
Korea's consumer prices have been on the rise, especially since May this year. The recent COVID-19 relief funds do not cause inflation, but could accelerate the rising trend that has been here in Korea over the few months by leading people to buy more foods for chattae tables.
Despite the rising prices, the use of relief funds means that chattae tables are still likely to be full this year. 서은경, Arirang News.
The International Atomic Energy Agency on Thursday revised up its projection of the potential growth of nuclear power capacity for electricity generation in the agency's first revision in 10 years. According to its latest revision, the IAEA now expects world nuclear generating capacity to double to 792 gigawatts by 2050 from 393 gigawatts last year. The outlook compares with the previous year's high projection of 715 gigawatts. However, the low case projection for 2050 remains essentially the same as now. The change comes as the world aims to move away from fossil fuels, with many countries considering nuclear power for reliable and clean energy production. Several new videos produced by the Korean Tourism Organization are garnering millions of views from people around the world who are curious about what life is like here in South Korea. The 8-part series takes a look at some lesser-known parts of the country. Our Kim Bo-kyung had the opportunity to meet the video's creators and files us this report.
I wanna join the village party. So much fun. I love the images of the countryside and the warm-hearted Arthur feel.
Each city in Korea is different and has its own uniqueness.
Titled Feel the Rhythm of Korea Season 2, the 8-part tourism campaign series introduced by the Korea Tourism Organization is again getting attention from global viewers. Last year, Season 1 featured Inarchi and the Ambiguous Dance Company, backed by Pansori Music, and this year offers another fresh mix, Korean hip-hop along with traditional folk music called Minyo. As well as big cities such as Gangneung and Busan, lesser-known places are included in the videos, and these are getting a lot of attention. The episode set in Seosan featuring local residents' daily routines by the mudflats on the west coast has already surpassed 10 million views. It features scenes similar to the movie Mad Max Fury Road, which the video makers got inspiration from, such as the way how the tractor is geared up, the skeleton hat made out of clams, and how tractors were going at breakneck speeds.
Filming it was tough. It was the monsoon season, and we had to film when the biggest typhoon and rainstorm had come. We only had 2 hours due to the tide, and our cars got stuck on the mudflats.
The episode set in Suncheon was also popular. Through the daily routine of elderly residents, such as making coffee mix, carrying a child in a podegi wrapping blanket, using a homey farming tool, and eating jeon and makgeolli, viewers can see the unique vibe of the Korean countryside. An idea developer says the one that focuses on fashionable elderly people in the Dongmyo neighborhood is another unique video worth watching.
I saw a comment saying one of this whole series shows the harmony between the young and the old generation. I felt proud about how we could shed light on the old generation too.
The hip-hop rhythms are attracting viewers, and when people can start visiting Korea again, these lesser-known places could get some extra attention. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. The Collective Security Treaty Organization, an intergovernmental military alliance in Eurasia that consists of selected post-Soviet states, has urged the global community to expand humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. The remark was made by CSTO Secretary General Stanislav Zas after a joint meeting of the Council of Defense Ministers, the Council of Foreign Ministers, and the Committee of Secretaries of the CSTO Security Councils on Wednesday. ZAS also emphasized the intention of the CSTO member countries to help Afghanistan in building a peaceful, stable, and prosperous country, free of terrorism, war, and drugs. The Secretary General signaled readiness for the organization to participate in international efforts towards stabilization and development of Afghanistan with the United Nations in a central coordination. After another joint meeting on Thursday, ZAS announced that the member states also agreed to deploy military forces along the Tajikistan border with Afghanistan in order to halt threats from terrorism, as well as to hold operations against drug trafficking and illegal immigration. Meanwhile, despite the call for international support for the Afghans, the CSTO member countries are against hosting Afghan refugees in their respective countries. The organization consists of Russia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. The organizers of the World Economic Forum on Thursday announced that the annual meeting of world leaders, influential executives, bankers, and policymakers will take place in the Swiss mountain resort of Davos next year in January, reverting back to an in-person meeting. They added that the meeting will focus on accelerating stakeholder capitalism, harnessing the technologies of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and ensuring a more inclusive future of work. While the annual forum normally takes place in Davos, the COVID-19 pandemic forced organizers last year to shift the meeting to Singapore before canceling it altogether. And finally, a previously hidden Vincent van Gogh sketch from a private collection went on display for the first time at an Amsterdam museum on Thursday. Titled Study for Worn Out, it depicts an old man sitting on a wooden chair and is known to be dated November 1882. A Dutch family who owns the drawing bought the sketch around 1910 before asking the Van Gogh Museum to authenticate it. Experts confirmed that it was indeed a new work by the artist. The drawing, which had been hidden in a private collection for more than a century, will be on temporary display until January 2, 2022, before being returned to its owners. 이승재, Arirang News.
Good morning. Typhoon Chanthu is passing waters off Jeju's Seogwipo city this morning and will move in a northeasterly direction, and it's forecast to pass through the Strait of Korea this afternoon. Conditions in Jeollanam-do are easing, while Gyeongsang-namdo province are preparing for rougher conditions. Busan should feel the strongest impact from around 4 p.m. this afternoon. Rain will continue to lash down on Jeju Island and regions along the eastern south coast at a rate of 50 millimeters an hour. So typhoon warning remains in place for all of Jeju and for waters of the island. A typhoon advisory is in place along the south coast, including Busan. Typhoon alerts will be expanded to the EC and Gyeongsang-Bukdo province today. And the further south you are, the more severe conditions you'll be dealing along with violent winds, but conditions will improve as the night rolls in. Typhoon-affected regions will notice much lower daily highs today, but upper regions will have a calm and sunny day today. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with our next newscast at noon Korea time. Thank you for watching and goodbye.